everyone, welcome. So, what we are going to do today is day 22, and we are going to continue our trend of we did a little bit of forensic toxicology, but more specifically, we're still in the subject of forensic anthropology, and we need to go through death and decay, is going to be our next kind of topic and piece of conversation. So our agenda, if you notice, first off, I'm going to talk about our Zoom schedule. I had you all respond to a Google Forms and ask what would be most beneficial or most convenient for you all to be able to come in and meet with me and ask questions. So I'm going to talk about what happened there of our agenda for the day. I'm just going to quickly go over kind of what we've been doing, of what we learned before our break, and then go straight into death and decay. And then finally, at the very, very end I do have this YouTube video, and I am going to talk a little bit more about it. I think I've talked to one class about it already, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about this YouTube video, and hopefully that could be something that you can learn and you can watch during this quarantine that will give you a little bit more insight. Now, homework-wise, we're still kind of getting into the just theme of this, so I'm not going to assign anything of nothing as of right now. Let's have this conversation, let's learn some material, and let's go from there. So first off, let's talk about our Zoom schedule. Our Zoom schedule, what ended up happening is that the very, very vast majority of you all went and voted for Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Now, my time that I originally had set was, if you notice, from 10 to 11 a.m. Now, a problem with this is that I really thought that teachers were going to focus on asynchronous learning, much like what I'm doing right now, meaning that you can go and you can do your assignments anytime during that kind of day or 2-day period. However, as this is continuing, I'm learning more and more teachers are doing synchronous learning, so I do not want to take up any time in another class schedule. So what we are going to do is, if you notice, I am going to be meeting during our Zoom during our meeting time. And what that is, that's from 11:15 to noon. Now, what this is it's meant, think of it like contact. It's a time to come on in. It's a time to ask questions. This is merely just a way for you to connect with me and to say, hey, Mr. Tate, I had questions on X. I really liked X. That's all this is. It is not required. You do not have to come in. You do not have to be here the whole time. You can hop in. I'll probably be grading or doing something else during this time, and you hop in at, say, like 11:30. Say, hi, Mr. Tate, I was having questions on X. We talk a little bit, answer that question, you leave at 11:35, perfect. Each one of these recordings or sessions are going to be recorded, much like what we've done in the past. So if at any point in time we do this, then you really need to know and understand it's not required, but it is a great, great tool for you and I to keep on getting involved. As our classes become more and more and we get a little bit more comfortable with this, what I would like to do is to start going and actually having discussions on specific material during our class time via Zoom. So that might be coming up in the future, but as of right now, this is where we're starting out. Okay. So that's going to be our Zoom schedule. Every single Tuesday, Thursday from 11:15 to noon, I will be on Zoom. You hop in, you wave at me, say hello, take off. Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about what we've done in the past before your break. Right before your break, you know that we went over forensic toxicology. However, I was telling you that was out of order. We are still in anthropology and we need to finish that out first before we continue on with the rest of this unit, such as toxicology, what a toxin does to a body, and then finally talking about just how the body is processed through forensics. That's the rest of this unit. So, speaking about anthropology, the main thing that you did to start out with is you went and you had your skeletal lab and you figured out that there was this correlation, this ratio between the length of the bones and specifically the height of the person. You know you can tell gender, you know you can tell height. Race is a difficult one, but it is possible, just a heck of a lot more inaccurate. There's lots and lots of different things that you can figure out based off of just a body itself that is really, really, really important. So what we are going to do is we're going to expand on that and say, what else can we figure out based off of this body? So what I am going to do is that, much like every single day, I am going to start out with a quote. And here's our quote of the day. And it is, I'm sure the makers of Downy would be pleased to know that their products makes even mummified human skin soft and fragrant. Now, this is by Bill Bass. Bill Bass is a professor at the University of Virginia, of specifically it's the Body Farm. So here's what I want you to do. Much like a lot of the things in forensics, I can't show it to you on here, but take a second, pause the video, and go and Google Body Farm. What it is a location in which forensic anthropologists use to determine the decay rate of bodies, and specifically what factors into the decay rate of bodies to figure out what evidence they can take from that information. That's the idea here. Now, we started out with just bones and saying, if you have bones, what's the next step? But the problem is that it takes a very, very long time for that body to decay to the rate in which you can just have bones. So what we need to do is we need to talk about the decay rate of a body specifically. So what to do is that a forensic anthropologist, first off, say you find a body just off in a clearing somewhere, that you as a forensics or a forensicist, you have to figure out exactly certain things about that body, and there are three main things that you need to do. The first one is COD, which is cause of death. The second is mechanism of death, and then finally it's the manner of death. This is all filled out by the ME, the medical examiner. So if you go and you figure out, I don't know, all the time on shows they go and they call out, oh, it's the ME, and they have this really, really fancy van, and this is the person who you're talking about. So we're going to go through each one of these and tell you what it means. So whenever you find a body, there has to be paperwork. The first paperwork is going to be the cause of death, the specific certificate of death, and it is going to be the disease or injury that produces the physiological disruption inside the body resulting in the death. So think of it this way. This is what causes for the body to die in some way. It could be gunshot, strangulation, blunt force trauma, overdose. It could be, knife wounds, as much as it is horrible, or disease, illness, anything of the sort. There is the cause of death. It says specifically what was the thing that caused the body to be interrupted in its normal cycle to cause death. Think of it, it's like the predecessor. It's saying this happened, and then afterwards you get the mechanism of death. So because I was hit over the head, then I had asphyxiation. It's the actual thing in your body that causes death. Most of the time, it's, heart disease, anything of the sort, which is why you see like a cardiology graph here, but it's called arrhythmia a lot of the time. That's by far the number one most common cause of death. But you could also in forensics talk about exsanguination, which is loss of blood, or asphyxiation, strangling, anything of the sort. Any of these are the specific mechanism of death. Again, the difference between the cause of death and the mechanism of death is saying the cause of death is the specific action that creates the mechanism of death. It's talking about how the cause of death, specifically how you got hit over the head, then what happens inside of your body to disrupt the normal physiological responses. Those are the first two. So you, as an ME, you have to decide cause of death, you have to decide mechanism of death, and then finally the manner of death. The manner of death is what you as forensics and forensic scientists are going to focus on. So the manner of death is the way in which the death came about. It's either natural, such as illness, accidental, car crash, a suicide, homicide, undetermined, or pending. Now, the main differences that students always struggle with are the last two, undetermined and pending manner of deaths. Let's talk about the differences first. An undetermined manner of death specifically is talking about how, like, you just don't know. That's what undetermined means. But students are like, is it like if it hasn't been solved yet? Is it? No. Undetermined manners of deaths are usually described in cases of missing persons. It's whenever you don't have any evidence to go off of, but they need a cause of death and they need that death certificate specifically. They would give it undetermined, like uh, label then for that manner of death. Or a pending manner of death is saying that we just don't know yet. We have the evidence necessary in order to figure out, but there has not been a clear answer at this time. So a lot of the time, like open cases are going to have pending manner of deaths, and it is not going to be until that case is closed in which the manner of death is described as one of the other four. Now, this is the main idea. Natural, again, is kind of self-explanatory. There was no foul play. Accidental, there can still be convictions based off of accidental manner of deaths. Accidental could be something like homicide. I ran a red light because I was so tired at the middle of the night. Something of the sort. That's still an accidental manner of death. It would be an accidental manner of death leading to blunt force trauma, leading to arrhythmia. Those would be your 3 steps. But this is the main idea and how you figure it out first. Now, after manner of death, because these are the main 3 things, you have to figure out, okay, what exactly is going to happen to that body because of the death. That's our next step. So, the first thing that we are needing to talk about is what happens to a person after they die. And the first thing that you always see, always, 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 is that in movies they will go and if they suspect or see a dead body, they're going to go and check pulse. Fine, all right, yeah, no, the person's dead. And then the next thing, they're going to feel their forehead. They're feeling specifically for temperature. It's called algor mortis. It's the body cooling rate. So you can see, even here, there is that equation that you can use to figure out the hours since death and to figure out exactly how much that temperature has decreased. Now, a problem with algor mortis obviously is the temperature outside as well. The colder it is, the more energy is going to be taken from that body, and the algor mortis is going to be exaggerated and accelerated because of that fact. So you have to take in the temperature outside as well into play for algor mortis. So algor mortis can be very, very difficult to figure out accurately. It's just kind of a guideline, more so than an accurate representation. If you want to be super, super accurate, what you need to go off of is next going to be liver mortis. Liver mortis is the pooling of blood around it. So imagine, like me, I'm a very, very pale complexion. If I run around a ton, I'm going to get bright, bright red. And because of that, that is the liver mortis. It's the blood going and pooling and not pooling in this case, thankfully, but going and coursing through my body that gives it that color. Liver mortis is whenever the blood begins to start to congeal. You know already with our blood spatter that blood goes and it, clots over time. So if the blood itself is cooled, then that promotes the clotting like um, features inside of your blood. And because it promotes the clotting features, then more and more and more your blood's going to start to clot, it's going to start to pool, and it's just this continuous cycle over and over. So this is liver mortis, and it's specifically how your blood pools inside of your body and causes this type of effect. Now, finally, the very last one is rigor mortis. Rigor mortis you've probably heard of. This is by far the most popular. It's the stiffening of the muscles and specifically your skeletal muscles. Think of like deers on the side of a highway. I hate to use this example, but if you see a deer on the side of the highway, more than likely its legs are perfectly outstretched. It's rigor mortis. Specifically, your muscles go and they tighten after death. So the process through all of this is that you get this main idea as to what happens to a person after they die. And what ends up happening is that we want to talk a little bit about just kind of coloration, what happens inside the bacteria in you, and what exactly happens here. So you can see here, this is a table as to what kind of stages you have dependent on the amount of time left to the elements and non-preserved that a person has been. Let's talk about this first, as a lot of the time my students, well, I've had it in the past, well, they're saying that, oh, um, I had a relative who passed away, I had a friend, and they decided not to go through like the process of they decided not to, um, go to the funeral home and they just wanted to be buried instantly and none of this happened. And that's the idea of like not cremation service, but a funeral home is to reverse this process or to slow it down. So that's why you're going to go and get, like exhumed and things of that nature. But left out in the elements, this is kind of the process in which that specific body is going to take. So the very first thing that happens is that it really does take a lot of time for a body to start appearing differently. You have to understand it's days, it's not hours. It's not like immediately after death, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, you're going to be able to tell. No, nothing of the sort. It's days before you can start to tell a difference. But the first thing that you are going to get is called putrefaction. And putrefaction is whenever the gases inside your body begin to expand and you're going to look really, really, really bloated. If you look again at photos of like the body farm, you are going to see bodies that are very, very, very swollen and bloated, and that's just because of putrefaction. Then afterwards, these gases escape and fluids start to drain from the body, and unfortunately, your flesh turns into a black color. That it goes and it starts drying out and it slows down the rate of decay. Eventually, it is going to start to ferment over time. But a really, really old body, you would expect to be like a very, very ghastly white, and it's not. It's black after everything else. This is the process in which a body takes after death. So, this is the end of all of my information, but I want you, again, thankfully you have time now. Let's go back and let's talk about this YouTube video. I know I've talked to one class about this, but this is a YouTube video of a medical examiner in Juarez, Mexico. And Juarez, Mexico right now is plagued, or during this documentary, is plagued by the cartels. And they find bodies out in the desert, and it has gone through this putrefaction and all of these processes, and these are just bodies that are past the point in which they could get any identifying features. The point of this documentary is to show how this medical examiner tries to reverse that specific processes so that they get evidence to convict against the cartels. Now, I have to say, I am not going to require you to watch this video. If you notice, it is not for your homework. Right there, specifically, this video is very, very graphic. You will see dead bodies. You will see bodies that have, pieces and limbs missing because of what the cartel has done. But I think it's a great documentary for you to understand what the body and just to see bodies that have not been specifically treated in order to prevent these processes. But this is the idea. Next, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about how insects play a role into this, into scavenging, and exactly what happens, and how do you tell kind of what happens based off of those insects on the body as well. But this is the main idea. Again, if you have any questions or you just want to talk to me, we're having our Zoom session this Tuesday at 11:15. You're more than welcome to join. But next time, I'll be uploading again another video like this. And please let me know if you have any questions. But everyone, see ya, stay safe, and thank you all.